I'm Courtney Skay. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager for Horizon Mobile. And today I'm going to go through a little bit about our product strategy and show a demo and go from there. Before we get started, usual disclaimer slide. I'm sure you guys have seen this many, many times already, so I can gloss over that one. All right, so a couple of housekeeping items before we kind of dive in and actually get started. First piece, Steve wasn't lying, we're coming to iOS. If you haven't stopped by and seen the demo already, she'll be showing it later on in the session. And questions, we'll have a section for Q&A towards the end. We have 2 mics in the room, so I'd appreciate if you guys use the mic since the session's being recorded. And then if you guys are using Twitter, Socialcast, hashtag EUC1822 or VMworld EUC, I think is the other one you can use, so feel free to use those. That's it. All right, in terms of the agenda for this morning, what I'm going to do first is go through a little bit of the background on the product, or kind of where we came from, go through a product overview, talk about where we're going. Then I'll get into the demo, and then, fingers crossed, we'll have a discussion with Dharmalesh. He unfortunately was kind of triple booked in the scheduling somehow, so I think he's going to be running from one session, so hopefully he'll make an appearance. And then there'll be plenty of time for Q&A at the end, or a lot of time for Q&A towards the end of the session. All right, back started. Okay, so a little bit of background here. Right now in the US, there are over 50% of folks who have a smartphone data plan right now. And on top of that, enterprises are still providing mobile smartphone devices to a large number of their employees, which means there are a ton of folks who actually have multiple kind of mobile devices. Are any of you guys in that boat? Few hands? Few hands? All right, I see like an entire row back there of people that are like, yes, yes, it's me. So what's going on then as a result is people are now using their personal device. They selected this device, that's what they like to use, and they're kind of being dictated and told what to use by their company from a mobile perspective. And it's been really tough since you have what you want to use and then you're getting told what you have to use. And today, over 90% of workers just want to use one device. They don't care if it's their personal or their work, but they want to use one device for both personal and corporate use just to make their lives a whole lot simpler. But the problem is everybody wants to control the device. So the employees want to control their personal device. They want to be able to keep their personal life private. They want to kind of expense mobile applications. They want to download whatever applications they want. And that's kind of their view on their device. It's their personal phone. But at the same time, we've spoken with a lot of companies, and they also want to own the device. They want to be able to control mobile application updates. They want to be able to securely support corporate assets. And by doing that, they've been taking over employees' personal devices. And also just controlling kind of mobile standards, and how does that kind of get done if you're not controlling the entire device. But the problem that I think a lot of people don't realize is a lot is going on these mobile devices, especially from the personal side. So the average number of applications on most mobile devices is 41. I'm guessing you guys probably have a lot more. This is not a typical audience. So that doesn't even include things like photographs and documents that are also housed on the device. So when you kind of add those up together, you're like, oh, that's a lot going on. And kind of add to that, if you're also using your device for corporate use, you have things like PIM applications for email. You might have your RSA token, internally developed applications, file sharing. You might have all this going on in your device. And from a management perspective, that's a lot to manage. So not only would you be having to manage all of the corporate applications, corporate data, you're also now managing all of that on an employee's device as well, having to account for things like chasing after the market to blacklist applications that might be malicious, or just even blacklisting applications that wouldn't meet your corporate standards because you don't want any company data to get leaked to these applications. And so our approach is a little bit different than kind of managing everything. What we do here is actually, instead of managing the entire device or even all of the applications and data on the device, our approach is you want just to manage what you need to manage. Manage the corporate applications and the corporate data in a secure way that doesn't impact the rest of the device, doesn't impact your employees' data. So now I'll get in a little bit more to the product. Let me just grab some water. All right. So our approach to being able to manage just the corporate applications and corporate data involves having what we call kind of a mobile workspace on an employee's device. And we believe that a mobile workspace should actually kind of encompass these 3 pillars that I'll talk about to actually make sure that it's kind of a legit mobile workspace, as we like to say. So security, I think this is kind of the top of mind for everybody on mobile devices. A workspace should be secure. It should be completely owned by the enterprise. It should be completely managed by the enterprise, have additional security policies associated with it that you can make sure that data won't be leaked across the device. The second piece is customization. So a corporate workspace should be able to be customized. As an IT admin, you should be able to select what applications you would like your employees to have access to and select what specific policies they should also be kind of selected to have as well. And the third piece is isolation. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of kind of personal going on. There's a lot of corporate going on. And it's really important to have isolation between the personal and corporate data. We don't want anything infiltrating. We don't want people to accidentally copy and paste things from financial reports into their Facebook account. So this notion of having isolation is actually very important when it comes to corporate workspaces on mobile devices. And you can actually see here we have a nice Android and iOS version. So just kind of heads up here, it's the same idea with different technological implementations, and I'll get into kind of what that means for each of these in the next couple of slides. But in terms of kind of the high-level picture here, so as I mentioned, there's a corporate workspace, and this is where you have access to applications and data from kind of the employee and management perspective. So an employee would access the corporate workspace through our VMware mobile application, and then the IT admin would kind of manage and customize everything through Horizon Manager, which is a management console. And I'll also kind of go through a couple of screenshots with you guys to talk about what capabilities we have from a management perspective. Okay. So in terms of the Android piece, this one we've talked about previously. Our Android approach is actually having 2 distinct operating systems running locally on one physical device. So you think about it, you literally have kind of your personal phone and your corporate phone running on one device. And this actually solves a lot of the issues we've been seeing with the Android platform. There's a lot of different flavors of Android across many different devices. And using this approach, we actually enable enterprises to have one version of the OS workspace, basically, across all of their Android devices within their fleet. So regardless of the underlying kind of device itself, the workspace remains consistent. And in terms of benefits to this workspace, things like application management. So any Android APK can actually get deployed to this workspace without having to modify it. And that's all done through the management console. So if you've either licensed third-party applications, built in-house applications, they can all get deployed very easily to this workspace. All done over the air, no kind of hand-holding needed to get that done. And in terms of kind of productivity features, we'd include a number of features out of the box. So, and I think PIM is some things. We'd also include SwiftKey, which is an optimized keyboard for Android, things like WebEx as well, just to get folks up and running within the workspace. And just to talk about those last two bullet points at the bottom, so we are working for future versions to actually enable VPN access through the workspace. So the idea is when you're on your personal phone, access the public internet, do whatever you want. But as soon as you kind of step inside that corporate workspace, you'd actually be operating within the corporate firewall through an always-on VPN access. So the idea is everything that happens within the workspace would also be happening within the corporate firewall, just making things like kind of bug reporting or kind of approving expense reports a lot easier if you're on the go. And same with network printing, so we'd enable that capability, so this way folks can kind of run from one meeting to the next and print out the documents they need without having to go back to their desk. In terms of dual telephony and billing, so we've actually announced partnerships with a number of mobile carriers, including Verizon Wireless in the US and Telefonica in Europe, to enable this capability. So the idea here is you would still have your personal number and kind of billing scenario, but you'd actually have your device enabled with a second telephone number in the workspace. So you'd literally have your personal number and your corporate number on one physical phone. And your company would also get billed for all of the corporate use, so there's no question as to kind of liability reasons and who's paying for what and why, which is kind of, in a lot of industries, kind of regulation calls for this. So it's kind of important from that regards. And again, the entire workspace for this platform is controlled through the management console, so they have full ownership over the corporate data without ever touching any of the personal data on the device. So the iOS one. So iOS is a little bit of a different technological implementation, as I mentioned earlier. What we're doing here is providing a native workspace experience. So you would literally have kind of your corporate applications running alongside your personal applications. However, they are kind of operating within kind of this sandboxed approach. So the idea is these applications would only be talking to each other and would never talk to any of the other applications on the personal phone. I think email and attachments are a really good example here. So let's say I open up an email on my personal device on iOS. If you guys are familiar, it always says open up attachment in. And it gives you a couple different options depending on what other applications you have on your device. So it's kind of a little bit of a security piece or a security hole there, because you're like, oh, well, I can actually open it up in my personal Dropbox and then save it to 52 other devices. With the workspace approach, you would actually only be able to access your email through the Horizon Mobile kind of email client. And then if you ever had an email attachment, it would either say you're not allowed to open attachments because you don't have access to anything, that would, but we'd also enable it to open up within the workspace. So you see here we have Octopus, which is now Horizon Data. When you open up an attachment in your workspace, it would actually say open up in Horizon Data. So you only have the option to also open up the corporate or attachments within the workspace. So kind of everything stays encapsulated and secure within that corporate workspace. And then kind of a couple of other features here is application catalog. So you can provide employees access to additional applications, and they can kind of pick and choose akin to kind of Horizon and the vision of application catalog and entitlement. And this is also very easy to kind of provide applications as well. So think of licensed applications or third-party in-house applications. You'd be able to deploy these as well. So kind of switching gears and talking a little bit about the management console. So Horizon Manager enables folks to basically create and customize the corporate workspaces, deploy them to employees' phone, and then continue to manage policies, application, life cycles, and updates to the workspace over the lifetime of the device and or employee. So just to go through a couple of screenshots here in terms of examples. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of application lifecycle management support. So you, as an IT admin, you'll be able to easily upload applications into the catalog within Horizon Manager. You can see it's pretty easily to identify apps. They're all alphabetically ordered, and you can also see the application, which is a lot easier for a bunch of people. So there's that piece. We also enable having multi-OS support. So on the View client down there, you can see we have both the Android and the OS version. So you have the ability to have the different OSs. And finally, we have the ability to version applications. So this is kind of important. So let's say you're developing a new internal application, and you've deployed it to all of your version 1.0 to all of your users, and now you're kind of progressing and have version 2.0, but you're waiting to see if it actually is working, if there's all the bugs, if it's meeting your security requirements. So you'd be able to provision version 2.0 to a subset of your users, kind of in short means security, before deploying to all of the users. So you can have multiple versions of applications kind of with different users on the network. And in terms of workspace management, we also provide a lot of information about the workspace itself. So you'd be able to see information about the users, kind of multi-device support. So are they using an Android device? Are they using an iOS device? Device information, so where's your employee located? Are they US? Are they not US? And then an activity feed, so you can get kind of the latest and greatest information on their workspace and make sure it's behaving correctly, it's getting the updates you pushed out, and being able to troubleshoot any information as well. You also see there's kind of a wipe button as well. So security piece, you can wipe the corporate data off the device pretty easily as well. So as I mentioned before, security is a pretty big piece with mobile. I think it's kind of the most talked about piece, so I have an entire slide on it. So in terms of safeguarding corporate data, we kind of take it from two different sides, both on the device itself and then through the management console. So from a device side, on the Horizon Mobile application, we provide full encryption of the corporate applications and data. So while all of this is kind of at rest on the device, it is fully encrypted. And as I mentioned before, one of the pillars of kind of a corporate workspace is complete separation of the personal and corporate data. So there is no talking back and forth between kind of your Twitter account and your email from work. We have SSL-based data transfer channels to ensure that data is kind of secure while in transit. Certificate-based management as well, which did not have that on there, I believe. And then copy and paste is prohibited between the personal and the corporate workspace. So no accidentally sending folks different tidbits of work information if you're working within your workspace between a file and your corporate email, and then you go into your personal, you won't accidentally copy it over. In terms of security now on the management side, when you first log into our management console, you'd actually see a dashboard of the overall fleet health. So you can see what your users are up to and ensure that updates are going through, and just make sure that kind of getting a feel for all of the users as well. We have group-based policy management. So you can customize the workspace based upon employee requirements. So you might have a different set of security policies and applications associated with folks in R&D versus sales and marketing versus finance, because everyone has a different set of needs while they're on the go from a mobile perspective. And you're able to kind of meet those needs through the management piece. Application lifecycle management, so I mentioned versioning of applications, and this enables you to kind of vet applications ahead of time before deploying them to users, making sure that any application updates actually do meet security requirements or even corporate requirements and work with your network before giving it to everybody ahead of time. And also remote wipe of corporate assets. So employee leaves, they decide to get a new device, you have the ability to wipe all of the corporate data and applications off of the phone without ever touching personal information on the device. So this way your employees, pictures of their families still remain intact on the device regardless of what you do with the corporate information. And I know that's kind of a sticking point for a lot of kind of users we've spoken with, is that they're uncomfortable having their admins take over their entire device for fear that they do wipe all of their personal data that they probably haven't backed up off their device. All right, so now we're going to go into a demo. And while I kind of get ready with the demo piece, you guys can read a couple quotes here from our beta trials. So we had a couple of beta trials with our Android client over the last couple of months. And given the product hasn't quite been released, we haven't been able to get some customers on stage quite yet. So instead, we got some anonymous quotes in terms of their experience with the product. All right. And I can put those back up after the demo. All right, so Android and iOS demo. Some of you might have seen these demos either at the booth, or you might have seen them in previous years in terms of the Android demo. Let me go through Android. So as I mentioned, personal phone with personal applications. You can see here I didn't actually need a passcode to access my personal device. I can kind of log on to Twitter pretty easily and not need to do that, which is pretty nice from a personal perspective. Have all of my personal applications here. And now I'm able to access the corporate workspace. I would just tap on the switch icon, and I'd be prompted for a security screen. And this question came up yesterday. So my passcode's not very secure. It's 9876. But this is fully configurable, so you can have alphanumeric varying length and complexity as well. And just like that, you're actually brought to the second operating system on the device. And this is the full second operating system. So there's full functionality in here. There's a different set of applications, and these have all been kind of provisioned and deemed kind of appropriate for me by my IT admin. And it is a full version of Android, so you can do things like add widgets to the platform and kind of customize it as well. One of the nice features here is we've also integrated notifications for Android. So if I'm working in the corporate workspace and I might be waiting for a personal email from a friend to meet me for dinner or anything like that, I could still see the notification. You can kind of see up here, I have a little Gmail notification. So I'm still getting my personal email notifications. And if I kind of scroll down here, I can see that's my personal email. So hopefully there's nothing too terrible in there. But then it brings me, oh great, living social deals, brings me to my personal side and my personal email, so I'm not missing notifications. And the same holds true for corporate notifications. If I'm working in the corporate or my personal side, I'd still get all of my corporate email notifications, and it would bring me to my corporate side. I have one here. I'm not actually going to tap over to my corporate email, but you'd actually be able to do the same. And if I hadn't kind of accessed my workspace in a while, I'd be prompted for my passcode initially to access that email before heading over to the corporate workspace. All right. So that's Android version. And now we have iOS. So kind of introduced yesterday is our iOS version of Horizon Mobile. So we're kind of in tech preview here. You can see it is kind of a native iOS experience with personal applications. And we've put, and again, no passcode, so I didn't have to access any of that. We've put all of our work applications in a folder just to make it easier to know that they're all in one place. You kind of open up the folder, and you see that all of the applications here are designated kind of work applications. They all have this kind of gray, we're calling it a beard at the bottom. I think it started off as a joke and it's just stuck. So they're all the bearded applications you can kind of see. And if I wanted to access my email here, I tap on it but I'm prompted for a passcode before being able to access this email account as well. And being the super secure person I am, my password's only 1234 on this. Again, fully configurable. And then I'm brought to kind of my email here. And one piece that is also true is you're not able to kind of copy and paste from inside the workspace, outside the workspace as well. I'm trying to see if I have a dummy email I can use because someone didn't send me a dummy email today. I'm looking at that guy to use. But if I had one, I would have been able to kind of copy and paste it outside or I wouldn't have been able to copy and paste data from inside the workspace to outside the workspace. So that is kind of our device side pieces. There we go. And in terms of the management piece, we do have it being shown in the booth. So if you guys are interested in seeing a little bit more information there, definitely kind of encourage you to stop by the booth and say hi. So we can go through a demo of the management piece specifically as well. Is Thermalish on his way? Okay. So we'll skip this piece and we'll come back to it. And I guess we can just skip to Q&A. And then go back if that's cool with people. And Thermalish is, just as kind of background there, he's actually working with our team and has internally deployed Horizon Mobile and was just going to go through a little bit of the internal deployment scenario as well. So if you guys have questions, feel free to step up to the mic and I can take those now. Step up to the mic, please, because it's being recorded, so we want to make sure all the questions are captured.
Good morning. And this might be a deployment question, but the coupling with Android is pretty low level. How do you get that kind of kernel level into an existing phone, or does it require buying new phones?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we've announced partnerships with a lot of device manufacturers and carriers to enable kind of VMware-ready mobile smartphone devices. We've announced partnerships with Samsung, LG, and a couple unannounced ones as well. In terms of getting our kernel mod on the device in order to run it, it can either be done at time of manufacturing, or actually we've been working with carriers to enable it to go on kind of post processing. So it can be done as a maintenance release. And essentially, a device could be enabled overnight through having an over-the-air update. And that's why we're working with folks to be able to kind of enable these devices. And once we get closer to GA, we'll be able to announce which devices will be compatible with the solution. And that's actually probably a good question that I'm going to get in a minute. So in terms of the solution GA, Android, I'd say stay tuned. It's pretty soon. In terms of iOS, you can see it's tech preview this week. We're aiming for beta in Q4 with release of next year.
I had two questions. The first one, I noticed on the Android workspace you had a camera application. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, on the iOS side, are you also going to provide a camera application that can only save into that workspace?
I think we're still investigating exactly what features we'll be able to provide within the workspace. But that is definitely kind of still on the table. And if you guys have specific use cases, I think that's definitely something we can explore. Yeah,
it's definitely an important feature. The second question, and you may have already answered it, on your Android VM that's running, is VMware responsible for over-the-air update if there's a security incident on that OS? How do I get an update when there's a security incident for that VM?
If there's a security incident on Android on which?
So my corporate workspace that's running on my Android phone is running in it's an Android VM. Mm-hmm. And if there's a security incident related, how as a user is that going to get updated? Or how as an IT pro, how do I get that update pushed out to my users?
So you're trying to push an update to your users?
To the virtual machine itself.
Oh yeah, so that actually gets done all over the air. So if you have an update, you'd push it out through the management console, and the user would get notified that, hey, there's an update to your corporate workspace, and it would update automatically over the air. Yep, thanks.
Hi, Courtney. Just to be clear, so it looked like the applications that were there in the workspace were all controlled by corporate. Mm-hmm. Is there any way that I, as a user, can actually, if there's a cool utility that I like to use, and I'm wanting to use it in my workspace as well, can I add it to that workspace, or am I completely locked from adding apps?
I would get really close with your IT admin for mobile.
Okay, thanks.
That you are talking about the workspace. Is it workspace that is it FIPS compliant? The data and applications.
Yeah, so right now it is not FIPS compliant. We've received a number of requests to make it so it's definitely something we're actively looking at for the future.
Will the first release support tablet operating systems?
Will support what?
Tablets.
So on the Android side, it will support smartphones only, and then on iOS, it will support both the iPhone and the iPad. And if we see kind of a need and a strong pull for Android tablets, we'll kind of work on that a little bit sooner.
Good morning. How is ActiveSync set up within these standalone email apps in the workspace?
I missed that question.
So the ActiveSync profile within these sandboxed applications, how is that set up? Is that set up within the Horizon Mobile console or some other means? Or how much configuration does the end user need to do to get ActiveSync going?
I'm just missing I think because there's feedback.
Exchange ActiveSync for email, calendar contacts, sync.
Wait, I literally can't hear the question. I'm sorry.
So.
Wait, maybe just come up and I'll repeat the question, because it's why I'm having a hard time hearing folks at the mics. Sorry. Oh, okay. How Exchange ActiveSync profiles are set up within the sandboxed applications. Okay, so sorry for that. So ActiveSync applications, it is a setting you can configure within the management piece, but whatever is kind of within the console, it also relies on your existing infrastructure. So you'd have to kind of configure your ActiveSync client or ActiveSync to only work within the workspace, and we do have information on that for the Android piece. So you can kind of have it restricted to work only in the workspace.
How does this differentiate between good or some of the other MDM solutions?
Yeah, so in terms of MDM solutions, as I mentioned, mobile device management, kind of their approach is manage everything, kind of own the device and manage it and kind of tell your employees that you now own all of their personal data. We believe that personal data is personal data, so we really only enable companies to manage their corporate data. It's a lot easier, there's less overhead, so just manage what you need to manage. And in terms of a solution like Good provides a sandboxed email client. So we actually provide a workspace that has additional functionality on top of things in email. So you saw there was access to kind of our Horizon data, so you have access to files. You have access to a secure browser that would also be encapsulated within the workspace. You have the ability to easily add internal applications to your workspace. So it's a lot more functionality within this workspace.
Type 2 hypervisors work really well on Macs and PCs because the assumption is that there are surplus resources available there and the user isn't going to use all of those. But on mobile devices, the resources are a lot less and people are a lot closer to using the full amount. So how does having a Type 2 hypervisor on an Android phone affect performance of the Android operating system? Is there a noticeable impact there?
Yeah, so I think the way to approach it now is mobile devices now are pretty gosh darn capable. So think of like computers. When we first introduced Type 2 hypervisors, they're probably about equivalent. So the mobile devices now are definitely capable of having the Type 2 hypervisor with performance. In terms, just kind of anecdotal here, when we first started developing our product, we were actually using the original Google Nexus 1, the little kind of short guy from like 4 or 5 years ago, and we were able to run it on there no problem. So having the newer devices, it's pretty awesome. If you kind of want to play around with it, we've got the Samsung Galaxy S3s at the booth, so there's no performance, kind of noticeable performance. I use it on a daily basis, so.
Excuse me, the way I heard you say that, you're only going to certify this on certain phones. And those phones are all going to have enough processing power and memory to handle this. Is that what I heard?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions? I can do a song and dance and kill time. So while we're kind of waiting here, I'll just talk a little bit about other things you should do while at VMworld the next kind of day and a half or so. Our lead architect for Horizon Mobile will actually be speaking later on today and again tomorrow with the head of our mobile team. So if you guys want a little bit more on the technical details, I definitely recommend you sit on that. He will be able to answer any like super crazy technical question you ever have. The Samsung one you can ignore because that was yesterday. And in terms of kind of future stuff, if you guys are interested in kind of staying informed, say follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. If you want to continue to hear my voice, I've got a number of demo videos on our VMware YouTube channel, so feel free to kind of check those out as well. Is there any news from Thermalesh? He's on his way. All right, so we can do song and dance for real now. It's my juggling, guys. Are there any questions in terms of kind of like what do you guys do right now for internal deployments? Are a lot of you guys just starting to investigate mobile, or do you have something in place? Anyone? Do you guys like have something in place right now besides ActiveSync? All right, I saw like one hand go down. All right, so what are some shortfalls that you are seeing with kind of current implementations, or what are some features that you're looking to have in the future? Okay, so better iOS and Android integration. Okay, from the management piece? Okay, so that's something that's good. I'll take that back to our team. Other folks? No?
Okay. Are your thoughts that companies will have two mobile device managements in some cases? So for example, we're an AirWatch shop. We've used Mobile Iron as well. Are your thoughts that people would have Horizon and another mobile device manager, or would it be just a single solution?
I mean, our approach is that they would only need a single solution just to manage the kind of corporate workspace. I could see where in certain instances they might want to manage both. This came up yesterday, and we kind of brought up if there's, for example, a consulting company and they provide their consultants a mobile device management tool, but then they're on a contract, so they might actually have kind of a workspace with their contracting company.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because, well, a couple of things. One, obviously, VMware is pretty new to this, right? So this is still an alpha release right now, right? And so obviously some of those others have been doing it for a while, so there might be some hesitation on some companies to do that immediately. The other would be because this only manages certain device types, like specific Android versions and Android devices, there may be a gap. So I didn't know if you guys had thought about that much for organizations that have those devices that are not within the footprint.
Okay, thank you.
Are you guys getting any negative feedback on the user interface for some of these sandboxed workspace applications like mail and contacts and calendar? Because we use Mobile Iron and we evaluated good as well. The positive side of the good solution was the sandboxed application, keeping it separate, of course. The downside was that a lot of our users, when we were in pilot, were saying, well, we really hate the we'd rather use the native application, the native mail application in iOS, for example, and that swayed our decision to some extent. So I was just wondering if, you know, what the general feedback is on the user interface of your Workspace apps.
Yeah, so in terms of the Workspace apps, we've gotten a lot. We've actually been kind of testing around our VMware Zimbra for Android client a whole bunch. It's actually available on a fling, at least for Android, and that's what we've integrated into our Workspace, so it has the look and feel of a native client. So we've gotten a lot of feedback, and I think we've made a lot of improvements on the client, so we've gotten some good feedback there. In terms of other applications within the Workspace, I mean, those were just kind of examples I had sent, or I'd kind of put into our devices. I mean, as a company, you're able to kind of pick and choose which ones you feel necessary. So if, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, you totally hate our email client, which you won't, you could always just add another email client to the Workspace. Hey, and this Thermalesh, so yeah, he's scared.
Hey, sorry for the delay, so I was in another session, so.
Poor guy. All right.
So today I'm going to discuss about like how we are using Horizon Mobile within VMware, and Courtney might have given a complete insight into what Horizon Mobile is and what's capabilities, what set of business use cases it's addressing. So to set some perspective, like within VMware, it's a global company with 14K employees, and it's global with workforce, and we have almost like 60 plus more SaaS apps and 6 plus mobile apps, and it's growing. And at the same time, we have, as the reach of smartphone is growing, and business is expecting more and more business capabilities to be mobile enabled, so the number of apps is also growing. But at the same time, we have enabled BYOM, and we have embraced BYOM, and we have implemented in North America and EMEA regions. So the need is now, how can we actually provide more secure way of enabling, like providing a space like where we can secure the corporate assets and also the data on the devices. And also, so some of the business use cases I like to talk about is like, here are some of the business use cases that VMware is trying to address. As we embrace the BYOM, we really need a way so that we can securely provide the entitled apps and content to the employees. At the same time, secure the corporate assets on their devices, like when they leave or whenever they lost the devices and all those things. And at the same time, have a way for IT to effectively manage these devices as well as. So there are a number of traditional vendors like, to name like Mobile Iron and a few of those guys, where they provide to have a way to manage the device level. But it has its own implications in terms of like legal and all those things, how much you want to interfere with the personal aspects of the devices, like because they have a personal as well as the corporate set of assets. So VMware sees in a different way, providing a workspace concept, where in Android we have a completely MVP, mobile virtualized phone, and in iOS it sees more as a workspace, where you'll be completely managing the workspace, but not the whole device. So that helps us to address a lot of legal and all those set of issues that the other forces that actually makes IT to scale down on the overall management side of the world. But this product, Horizon Mobile, enables us to effectively manage, at the same time secure all our corporate assets. So other is more around, as I said, like as we build more and more mobile apps, we need to way to securely, at the same time, effectively manage the life cycle of the apps itself. Like it's not just the initial distribution of the apps, but the whole, like how can we upgrade the apps, at the same time, who has access to what set of apps, like if finance needs certain set of apps, and they might have more policies around the data that sits on the devices and all those things, whereas HR might have a different policies, like sales might have a different policies. So that the overall management, the life cycle of the apps, data that are on the devices, that's also one of the key things. And the last but not the least is more around as sales start, the field is on the road, for them providing the right tools that can be done directly on their devices rather than coming through the VPN, going to the web world, connecting to the VPN, and then accessing the corporate assets. Having them rightly access to all the corporate assets is also a key thing. So we started with the beta of this Horizon Mobile a few months back, and we have 150 plus users, and it's growing, and we are expanding the number of users. But till now, the overall deployment as well as the operational experience is pretty positive. Like it comes as a virtual appliance, and it plugs into an enterprise directory so that you can actually ensure that you are always ensuring that only as users, employees get access to this Horizon Mobile Workspace. And at the same time, if you are doing an firing or you're leaving the company, you have a complete control. So from an installation and configuration standpoint, like if you are using on a pure virtualized infrastructure, it's a very simple thing where you upload the OVF file, create a VF, and you use the VMI tool to just configure. It's just a breezy few set of steps. If you're in the cloud construct using vCloud Director, there is an additional step, and but it's not a complex set of steps you need to follow. And also the configuration standpoint, it's pretty, for linking to the Active Directory, is a pretty easy configurations. From an overall standpoint, the overall installation configurations is a breeze. Like any employee or any sysadmin can do in few hours, not days or anything. So the future is like we are actually evaluating currently more on the Android workspace, and we are expanding to the iOS workspace, and we are expanding to 250 users in the next 1 month. And the idea is to leverage this unified tool to manage all the devices, workspaces as we speak. And the key thing is we are expanding this solution to become more in line with our corporate strategy of any apps and data anywhere, any device, employees should be able to get access to all their entitled assets in a secure way, at the same time able to manage. So that's the direction we're heading, and we are in midway, and maybe by next VMworld we will have a successful story to share. Any questions?
All right, so just quickly wrapping up here, kind of as we talked about, one of the key pieces is we really want to embrace kind of employees' kind of preference and what device they want to use, hence the ability now to work on kind of Android and iOS and extending our Horizon vision to also include the iOS workspace. One of our pillars was customization of this workspace. So again, very important to be able to kind of control and customize this workspace from a corporate standard. So enabling, selecting which applications and which policies you would desire and need as a company. And finally, security, kind of hammering down on this one. Super important to kind of secure all of the corporate assets, applications, data on mobile devices, make sure that there's no leakage from the corporate to the personal side. And just make sure that you have the ability to kind of remove assets as needed as well. So with that, I'm going to leave this slide up in case you guys didn't get a chance to copy down any information you might have wanted. We have a few minutes left still for questions. So feel free to either go up to the mics or come up and ask me, since apparently I can't hear.